Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of your Lake Fork Guide. It's an episode of the Guides Network. This guy's not a guide. He's a pretty good buzzbait fisherman, and I saw it firsthand this morning. If you guys watched on Monday, you saw it as well. Mr. John Maxfield. John, thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Enjoyed it.
Appreciate you joining us here and giving us your approach to buzzbait. And I know you told me about a couple of secret things you do, a couple little tricks, little tweaks that you do to help you get more bites on the buzzbait. Hey, a buzzbait is one of the most fun ways to catch big bass, especially in the fall of the year, which we're in now. I love doing it. You love doing it. We all love catching them on a buzzbait. There's nobody that doesn't enjoy it. So today we're going to give you all the details on how we catch big bass in the fall on a buzzbait. Well, I guess if we're going to talk about buzzbaits, we got to start with the baits, the buzzbaits. We're going to tell you all the gear we use. We're going to start with the buzzbaits themselves. There's a few different styles of buzzbaits that you can use, and they all make noise. Some make different noise, some make more noise, and there's different ways. And this is kind of the traditional buzzbait is what I call the squeakers. Squeakers, right? So it's just a straight arm like this. The blade rotates around, and if you listen to that very closely, you can hear a little bit of squeaking going on. Couple things that I'll do. I know people have heard over the years, you can, leave your buzzbait hanging out the car window and get it to, the more you use it, the more it'll squeal and squeak at them. One thing you can do is take a pair of pliers, and I've always liked doing this, and it seems to really help make noise, but whatever this is touching, whatever your blade's touching, rough it up with your pliers. So I'll get my pliers in here and I'll just make rough spots on it, right? I'll take this rivet right here and rough it up, and you just kind of chew up the corners of that rivet, and then when that blade hits it, it adds a little bit to the squeaking ability. So if you've got one of these squeaker buzzbaits, try roughing up this rivet and this bead down here at the bottom, and when those go to rotating, that'll make even more squeaking noise, because it ain't like you're trying to be quiet with a buzzbait.
No,
ever. The other second most traditional one is going to be a clacker. This right here is the Sandtone braid buzz. It's an interesting one. You can throw it on braid around heavy cover because it's got an extra heavy gauge arm on it, but it's got what they call a clacker on it. You guys see that little deal hanging there, and is that, well, it's gonna be kind of hard in the wind, but you can imagine you can get a little bit of it there. That little tink, 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 tink. That's what it'll do when you reel it in. Tink, 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 as you reel it in, and that makes more noise than your traditional squeaking buzzbait. It certainly makes a different noise. And then there's one that I'm a really big fan of. This one out here is called either Headbanger or Head Knock. I think it's called Headbanger. A guy out of Illinois makes it. He visits Lake Fork once in a while, and he actually sells some in the marinas down there at Lake Fork. The deal with this buzzbait is very unique because the blade, you can actually manipulate the arm, and the blade actually hits the head every time it turns around. John, you heard it this morning.
Yeah, different sound.
It's a lot louder and a lot more aggressive, annoying probably if you're a fish, sound than any other buzzbait. And now this morning it seemed like the more subtle squeaking one was getting more bites and better bites, but I can't tell you guys, especially on pressured lakes like Fork, how having a louder, more aggressive and totally different sounding buzzbait has helped. I mean, I've caught so many big fish on these head knocking buzzbaits over the years out there.
It seemed like the bites you did get today was more aggressive than the subtle bites that I was getting on this one.
They were kind of like that last big one I caught on it, just came all the way out of the water. And it was the best bite we had today. It was the only one we had where the fish came all the way out of the water to hit it. Yep, absolutely. It gets more of a reaction, more of an aggressive reaction from fish with that louder bait. And sometimes on pressured lakes like Fork, those big bass, you got to really just irritate the heck out of them to get them to bite, right? And that's what this bait does such a good job of. This on Lake Fork, this is my favorite buzzbait to throw right here. Which one are you throwing?
Well, today I throw into more of the squeaker buzzbait like you talked about earlier. It is fall. I love a black and blue, especially black and blue buzzbait during the fall. I was kind of messing with Billy, explaining to him, you know, because I was getting a few more bites.
He was catchy. He was whooping on me. He was whooping.
And there's a few extra things that I like to do.
But he was throwing a black one, and I didn't have any of these with a black skirt on it, and he didn't bring an extra one. He brought one. So he says. Allegedly.
We ain't in my boat. I just didn't know.
Allegedly, he brought one, folks. I'm just saying.
But usually in the springtime, like I said, I'll go to the black and blue. It's my favorite color. I always like to throw a red trailer.
So that for you is one of the key deals you told me about earlier today. Yes. You really like having a red trailer hook. And by the way, folks, always, these are the buzz baits we were throwing today. You see they both have trailer hooks on them. Always put a trailer hook on your buzz baits.
You know, and that's...
What do you think that red does? Just helps them key in on something?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think they see that red behind it. And if you'll notice, most of all the fish I caught today was on this small hook. I think they key in on it. They're looking at it. You know, it's the water's dark. It's kind of dirty. To me, it just makes me feel like they got something that they're targeting when they go after the bait.
Gotcha.
The other things that I like to do, not necessarily on these black buzz baits, but like if I'm throwing a white buzz bait, especially in the spring or something of that nature, I'll put a willow leaf spinnerbait blade at the back of it and just kind of give them something to look at. And not necessarily, and bad thing, you can't really run a trailer on that,
right?
But it will make them look at that hook, and they will attack that willow leaf spinnerbait.
Just gives them something where they got this kind of this bigger bait, and it just zeroes them in right there by the hook. It gives them something to focus on.
And not a huge one, but I didn't bring, you know, I didn't bring one out of my boat, but I got a few tied up. But those are the two things when I'm throwing a buzz bait that I like to key in on.
Well, that's good, man. That is pretty good tip, you know, giving those fish something to zero in on, especially something that's right there at the hook.
Yep.
That's a big deal, I think. Now, what you'll notice sometimes when you fish a buzzbait, I think something everybody that wants to fish a buzzbait needs to know is sometimes that buzzbait will run crooked. Sometimes you may want it to run crooked to bang in the cover or whatever, because I'll tell you, a way to get a good bite on a buzzbait is absolutely to throw it out there, get the reel in it, and have it a stump right here and have it go thump and hit that stump, and the buzzbait will bounce off the side of a stump pretty good, right? So a good thing to do is to have it run sideways at times to hit it. But either way, if you want it to run straight and it's not, or you're wanting it to run crooked and it's running straight, if you manipulate the arm right here, so if you want a buzzbait to run straight, first you want to make sure that this arm, when you look at it from the bottom, is dead straight. This one's got a little bit of a bow in it, so we'll fix that a little bit. But then the second thing you want to do is make sure this line, see, this one's a little off. You want to make sure that this second arm, if you're looking at it straight from the bottom, is dead parallel and in line with this one. And I know you guys are looking at it from the camera. This arm needs to be dead in line with this arm from the bottom. So I'm looking at it from the bottom. Hope y'all understand that. But if you want it to run crooked, bam, you do it like that, guess what? That bait right there is going to run that way. Take it this way, that bait right there is going to run that way. You can really manipulate how your buzzbait runs just by tweaking this arm right here a little. Now, one thing about this buzzbait that's pretty cool with the head knocker, if you don't want it to be a head knocker, now it's not a head knocker. And if you get you some of these head knockers and you catch a fish, sometimes they'll pull so hard it'll bow that out. And when you need it to go back to hitting the head, you just bend it back down and it'll start hitting the head again. So don't be afraid to experiment and manipulate your arm angles on your buzzbait to do different things, right? Different noises for the head knockers, different angles of approach for the rest of your buzzbaits. Be willing to play with that a little bit to get what you want out of the bait. As far as gear that we're throwing on, I'm interested to hear, you know, what size rod, what type of reel, what's all the gear you're throwing your buzzbait on?
I'm throwing and I just tied this in last night when you called me, but this is a 7.3 Dobbins rod. And then I'm throwing a 7-to-1 silica Shimano reel. Yeah. You know, you want a little bit of a fast, especially in this grass that we was fishing. You want to get thrown out there, and we talked about it earlier, but you want to get that retrieve going as quick as you can to get your buzzbait on top of the water. Yeah,
that's something when we show you guys the retrieves, that's a key component, is getting it going quick. Now, yeah, I think a high-speed reel is really important when you're fishing a buzzbait for a lot of reasons that we're going to explain some of them during the retrieve section, but you don't need to control your hand speed because you can visually see how fast that bait's going. So it's not hard for you to slow down to the right speed that you want to slow down to, right? Because you can visually see it. That being said, when you're fishing on top water, if that fish, and a lot of times these fish, when they hit a top water, man, they're running hard. They run up and get the bait hard, they'll wake behind it, they're swimming fast. If they come at you, you got to have some speed in your hands on a high-speed reel. I throw it on a Lew's 7.5 to 1. I throw it on a 7.5 medium heavy rod. I noticed yours said heavy. Is that a 7.3 heavy?
Yeah, heavy fast action.
Okay, heavy fast action. So,
and it may be a little stiff.
A little stiff, okay. And so I'm throwing mine on a 7.5 medium heavy. And actually, guys, I throw buzzbaits, even though most topwaters you want to throw on braid or mono, I throw buzzbaits on fluorocarbon line. I don't want to throw it on braid because that can cause issues with hook sets and arms getting mangled beyond repair. That's what this buzzbait is for from Santone, the braid buzz. But I feel like fluorocarbon gives me a better hook set when I'm, when you're setting the hook on a buzzbait, you're reeling it so fast, the bite happens so fast, and the hook set's more of a reaction hook set. And when you're doing that, having less stretch in that fluorocarbon, I feel like you're going to get a better hook set than you are with mono. Now, if you're going to throw a little bit bigger rod like John's throwing, then I probably would throw a monofilament, right? Like if I had a heavy action rod with a little bit stiffer tip, a little bit stiffer rod, I would want that mono. I just want to get that sweet spot of having just enough give to let them get the bait, but still enough power to drive the hook home on a reaction quick type of hook set. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense to y'all. So that's the gear. Yeah, 7.3, 7.5, medium heavy, 20-pound fluorocarbon. Showed you all the buzz baits. Areas. This is the fun part about fall fishing. If there's shallow cover and on a big shallow flat, they're roaming around chasing shad. They're liable to be anywhere. And one great thing about a buzz bait is a great thing. We did an instruction on a swim jig a couple weeks ago. That's another bait that this applies to. You can cover some ground. You can fish it fast. You can keep moving, pick up a reactionary bite where you can here and there like we did this morning. And you can cover a lot of water with a buzz bait. And in the fall, my God, you need to cover a lot of water because they do move around to feed more in the fall than any other time of year. They're not setting up necessarily on a point. They're not setting up necessarily on a creek bend. They will get out on flats and just chase the bait. Wherever the bait goes, that's where they're going. And so a buzz bait is a great, great bait around any type of shallow cover, be it vegetation, be it timber, whatever it may be that's up shallow, you can catch fish on a buzz bait around. So, long story short, where to throw a buzz bait? Anywhere on a shallow flat. I mean, that's really the answer.
Well, we noticed today that, we even talked about it.
For the fall.
Yeah. We talked about it, we was throwing at timber, we was throwing at different things, and we noticed that, when we got around, grass areas, that's where we was, I think you said, they're up there pinning the shad up against this grass, and that's where we was getting our strikes, so.
Yeah. Yeah, this particular morning, the shad were up there on the underwater vegetation. I think those shad were probably up there eating some algae off that coontail grass that was in that flat we were in. But man, we went all over a really big flat and kind of got bites a little bit here and there everywhere we went. But every time we would get around a good patch of coontail, it seemed like that's where we would get our bites at. And then you could see the shad kind of flickering in that coontail. And yeah, I think those bass were sitting outside of that coontail just pinning them up against it, because a lot of our bites came right as our buzzbait would approach the grass. As soon as it would get up against it, boom, they would hit it. That's right when they were attacking it. So that was kind of what was going on this morning. It was interesting to see that. But, tomorrow or the next day, man, they might be sitting on that timber. Yep. You know what I mean? Or just flooded bushes or anything up shallow. It can be random in the fall, because they will, where if that bait pulls off that grass and moves to something else, those bass are going with it.
When we were talking about rods a while ago, I think a mistake a lot of people make, especially when they're fishing buzzbaits around, grass, heavy grass like we was, is they'll get aggravated. They'll throw it out there, make a couple cranks on it, and they're not hung up, but they're all in the moss. To me, I like a little stiffer rod, yank it out of that moss, and keep going. Don't reel up because you got a little moss on it.
Yeah, and there's some key things that you can do within the retrieve and the cast and that kind of how you fish the bait that can help you stay a little bit more snag free. So right now, me and John are going to get up. We're going to show you guys how we're working these baits, how we're throwing those baits, how we're retrieving them. A, to keep them clean and fish them efficiently, and B, to get those fish to bite them and get them in the boat. All right, guys, when we're casting a buzzbait out there, there's a couple decisions you got to make, or one decision you got to make, I should say. Are you throwing at targets, or are you covering ground? This morning we were fishing a shallow grass flat, and we were really making long bomb casts across a big flat with patchy grass across it. At times, though, we were up by the bank and throwing at shoreline vegetation. If you're throwing at a target with a buzzbait, don't be so far away from it. Don't try to make super long casts. It's more important than you're accurate, and you get that big, loud, noisy bait close to the target that you're trying to fish it by, and that you have it fishing in a strikeable position, which means on top with the blade turning. The speed can be up to you, and that can be day to day based on what the fish tell you. But one of the biggest keys to fishing a buzzbait, especially fishing target oriented buzzbaits, is going to be to get that bait rolling as soon as it hits the water. And so what I like to do is when I make a cast, I like to kind of preemptively start thumbing the spool, and I like to immediately click my handle. As soon as the bait hits water, click my handle and simultaneously lift the rod at the same time. If I click my handle and lift right as the bait hits, it's going to stay right on top, and really as soon as it hits, that blade will start turning immediately. All right, check out what I'm talking about. Watch my hands right here. Watch how quick I click the handle and start lifting. I'm going to start thumbing now, click, lift. And that buzzbait is on top. I mean, as soon as it hits the water, it stays on top. Now, when I'm reeling it in, I like to hold my buzzbait in an upward angle, about an 11 o'clock position, or 1 o'clock, I guess, depending on which way you're looking at the clock. But I like to hold it right here. That way, when I get a bite, it allows that rod to bend and allows that fish to load before I pull into them. If you're holding your rod straight out, there's no bend in the rod, and that fish doesn't have any stretch to load up on. It doesn't have any flexibility. But when I hold my rod up, thumb, boom, drag, lift, yeah, just like we said last time. When I hold my rod up like this, if that fish bites right now, the bend of that rod is going to allow that fish to load up a little bit before I go to pulling on them. And on a buzzbait, it's pretty simple, guys. When they bite, man, you don't really have to necessarily wait. I teased John a little bit this morning because he had a couple he swung and missed on. Man, that wasn't him missing. They just missed his buzzbait. Usually when they hit a buzzbait, they kind of either get it or they don't. I don't find that any hesitation or waiting is really necessary. If you're right here, boom, one hits it, you just start pulling. If you're using the right rod, reel, and line combination, that is all the hooks that you need for fishing a buzzbait. Well, all right, guys, there you go. There's what we know about how to fish a buzzbait, man. Go check out those rods at 6centsfishing.com. Go check out Lou's reels. They're all linked below. Hey, when you go to 6centsfishing.com, be sure you punch in the code Your Lake Fork Guide. You'll get a 10% discount on everything you order. John, one more time, dude. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Great day today, man. We came out here. It's about noon now. We absolutely caught them this morning. We had a big bag, about a 25-pound best 5 bag. It was so much fun. Caught most of that on a buzzbait. Not much more fun can be had than beautiful fall weather, and fish biting a topwater bait like a buzzbait. Man, it was a great time. You guys get out there and try that buzzbait this fall. It's a very effective tool, I promise you. And hey, we sure appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you next time right here on Your Lake Fork Guide.